Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this second part of the Food Pan Friends. And today we'll be highlighting four topics. I think you're aware of it. And our first speaker of the day is Ms. Krishnaveni. Ms. Krishnaveni is an ex-IT professional who believes feeling healthy and feeling good about yourself is not a luxury. It's an absolute necessity. With passion towards wellness, she has done her degree in nutrition and dietetics and is practicing as a nutritionist and wellness coach as a freelancer. Krishnaveni Garu, it's a pleasure to have you amongst us. So I open the session and over to you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Paniel. Hope I'm audible and visible. So let's start to this session. Today's topics are everything on food, but basically on the other lifestyle concerns, whatever we are facing nowadays on a frequent basis, right? So one thing is that first and foremost thing is comes to the hair. Who doesn't love long, luscious, vibrant, and gorgeous hair over the crown, right? We will be talking about what is that, how can we make our hair healthier from inside so that we can shine from the outside, right? Healthier hair is one of anyone's dream, but achieving it's making very difficult nowadays, right? And also whether you believe it or not, whether you're satisfied or not, a hair fall is will not make anyone happy. It bothers a lot, and it keeps in a panic mode, be it be children or even the adults, right? Everyone, if you talk nowadays, whatever when I'm talking to my clients, first thing what they come out is, I am having facing very lot of hair fall. It's a thinning is happening, and also that is one thing we are observing on a daily basis, right? Basically in a month our hair grows like half an inch for an healthy adult, and once the hair comes out of the follicle it is dead. So that is the reason, if you are cutting your hair, if you're going to a parlor or a barber shop, if you are making your hair trim and all, you'll not get hurt because it's already dead. So you know when it is a healthy hair, that is when you will see that minimal shedding, no dandruff, hair texture is smooth, and minimal breakage happens. So I request one thing from your audience is that I request if anyone can switch on your videos so that it can be an interactive session, right? And also I'll be knowing whom I'm speaking to, if it is possible. Regarding this hair, what is the one more thing is that I have discussed is that healthy hair makes us very much happy. When you know your healthy hair is healthy, that is when you will see that minimal shedding happens, there is no dandruff, and your hair texture is smooth enough, and there is a minimal breakage. So what causes this hair loss? Can people start commenting over in the chat so that I'll be knowing if you know few of the answers why the hair fall happens, so that I can take the discussion forward from there. Right, Asha, improper sleep is one of the reason. Iron deficiency. I expect some more answers. Stress, right, that is a major concern nowadays. Food intake, stress, unhealthy diet, sleep deprivation, correct? Most of the answers all of you might have known about it, right? So first thing is the poor eating habits. That's the main thing which causes the hair fall. Second thing is a dry scalp, usage of wrong products, hormonal imbalances, oxidative stress, oiling and hair treatments, and even aging and genetics, stress, environment condition, and next thing is last foremost thing is the medication. So recent past, whenever I interacted with my clients, I already discussed that hair fall thinning is more, and also this is leading to the dense hair. Do you know the reason why the thinning of hair is happening? Because when the hair is coming from the root, scalp oxygenation is not enough happening, and also the vitamin absorption is not happening to the hair, whatever the follicle is required. So when the density is the issue, it is the issue with the follicles. It is the follicles are weak. The hair follicles are the seed for your hair. I think you heard in your primary classes and your secondary classes, for any cellular growth, protein is must, and that would be I'll be discussing in the next topics. So protein is the most important thing, and that is the first thing your hair is made up of, right? And if you see, if you eat the right healthy food and everything, all the vital organs will be used. The food will be used by all the vital organs like pancreas, your whatever the stomach, intestine, or the heart, lungs, and everything. But last, it comes to the hair, the food. So the very minimal you're getting to the hair. But when you are sick, when you fallen sick or normal fever is enough to shed your hair first, right? Although we cannot change the factors like age, genetics, and all, but diet is a one thing which you can surely control, right? And even this salon treatments are superficial for this hair growth, but that may not be enough for your hair to grow. Okay, and what I told you is that the diet is the one thing which you need to work upon. Like our skin, our hair can also be the reflection of your overall healthy diet, right? And the hair cells are the fastest growing cells in the body, and also as I told you, the first ones to be shed off if you're suffering from any nutritional deficiencies. So the best way to picture your hair grows is that if is a garden. So how well it grows is completely the result of what is happening underground. How good is your what is that manure, your soil, and everything, that well it grows your above the ground, right? So in anything that interferes like medication, illness, infection, or chemicals that have potential to stop your hair from being formed properly. So example, if you have two potatoes, two tomatoes, and two onions, and you have five guests at your home, can you cater everyone? Can you serve food for everyone in your at your home with these six vegetables, whatever you are having in total? Not really. We need to have a certain quantity to everybody's need, right? So in that way, it's similarly important to consume right nutrients so that in right quantities, so that you can certainly order this bodily functions, right? As you already told, this nutritional deficiencies, low energy levels, low HP count, that is iron levels, being lethargic, I mean to say sleeping all throughout the day, gastric issues, cramps, all these concerns will lead to this hair fall. So basically this as I told you, the protein is a building block for your body and is also responsible for your cell formation, and hair follicle is the root of this hair where new hair cells are formed. This is an ongoing process, and what happens is that when your hair is in growing stage, right, from last 2 to 3, which can last for 2 to 3 years. Once this phase is completed, your hair will be going to the resting phase. Once every 3 months, finally it will shed off and replace the new strands. So what I was mentioning is that lack of protein leads to this delay formation of the cell formation, and our hair is likely to be dry and brittle. That is the reason of the dry scalp. So if your protein intake is more enough, much enough, then your hair is also will be smooth. Okay. And according to the statistics, 88% of the population are protein deficient. Do you think it is an affordability issue? Certainly not. Because take for an example, You may think that one katori of dal I'm taking every day, that is enough for my proteins requirement for the whole day for my body. Do you think how much a katori of dal has the protein? Can someone answer over me in the chat? The katori of dal, whatever you have in a daily basis, how much protein do you get? 5 to 6 grams, 5 grams? Yes, the answers are with you, correct? So do you think that dal is enough for your protein requirement? Exactly, no. And also, if you are a vegetarian, you may think that I am eating eggs, 2 eggs per day or 3 eggs per day. That is enough for my protein requirement. No, because the egg white contains 6 grams of protein. For a body weight to 1 kg body weight, you need to have 1 gram of protein every single day. That is, for example, if you are 60 kgs, you need to have 60 grams of protein every single day, including your lentils, legumes, your eggs, dals, pulses, tofu, paneer, dairy products, everything you must include in a quality and quantity terms, right? And also your hair requires 80% of it. So coming to the next important vitamins and minerals are this B complex, antioxidants, omega-3 fatty acids, and iron, right? So these are also equally important apart from protein. So if you are seeing nowadays, B complex is a vital issue deficiency nowadays with the people who are vegetarians mostly, and even it's a borderline for the non-vegetarians, right? The absorption is not getting properly for them. That is because the biotin is a powerful B vitamin, which is also called as a hair growth vitamin in our terminology and all. So it makes your hair thicker and also repairs your hair. It makes your brittle hair stronger too, improves your health and texture. So where do we get all this vitamin B complex? Like food sources like B6 and B12 are these sunflower seeds, pistas, whole grains, almonds, and your prebiotics and probiotics, and your fermented rice, and your whatever the idli dosa batter where you're fermenting and all, right? But when you're deficient, it is definitely a need to have a supplement. You cannot rely on these sources, but you can consult your physician or dietitian before getting into it. Yeah. So, and also the RDA recommended of this B complex is that 425 milligrams need to have on a daily basis. Right. Second thing is that antioxidants. So, what are the antioxidants? Vitamin A, C, and E. So, which are essentially available in carrots, and also these are the very best good for your eye and even for your hair. That will help for the growth and the thickness, right? So that will also help you to produce naturally the oil sebum to your hair, which moisturizes and give your scalp smooth texture enough. And vitamin C, that will help you to fight against the free radicals, that will also help you to reduce this oxidative stress. Nowadays it is becoming more because of the pollution or the radiations whatever you are using before the computer, and even the devices whatever you are using it. Free radicals are causing a lot of damage to your whole body, not only to your hair. So good amount of vitamin C is very much important, along with the antioxidants of vitamin A and E, right? So most of you know that citrus fruits has good amount of vitamin C, and oranges, and even the basic norm is that you need to have around 1000 mg per day to get good amount of vitamin C on a daily basis, right? So, and next thing is that vitamin E, that's a fat soluble vitamin. So that will help you to repair the tissues, and also in the same way it helps to the oxidative stress. So next is that vitamin D. How many of you here very good with your vitamin D levels? Are you getting checked every single year, at least a year, not even 6 months or something? It is very much important to get your vitamin D levels checked and act on the root cause. I think most of you are from Bangalore or nearby places. All over India is vitamin D deficient. Though you're getting sunlight in the northern parts and even Andhra or anywhere, but that is not enough to get absorbed to your body. If you know, in our childhood days, our parents used to do for us oil bath and make us sit for some time so that oil gets absorbed to our body. In that way, you need to do oil bath and sit under the sun for at least 40 minutes to 30 minutes. Then every day. Then only you get the requirement amount of vitamin D absorbed to your body if you are deficient. Otherwise, you need to act on it so that you'll not be deficient with your bones, brittle bones, hair, the other parts like even the weight management who are looking to reduce weight. Vitamin D is very much important for the fat metabolism along with vitamin B12. Right? So do your master health checkups regularly and get it corrected. Right? Second thing is that omega-3 fatty acids that will help you, also very good for your health as well as your hair. This is a super nutrient which is required for all over the body. Getting enough of this omega-3 fatty acids will help you to improve the dry scalp, and also your hair will shine and grow. Right? These are natural sources are walnuts, mackerel, salmon, cod liver oil, oysters, sardines, and all. And last thing is that iron, which most of the ladies are anemic to it nowadays. Because iron plays a crucial role in making the hemoglobin, a compound that carries this oxygen to the cells, which will help you to function the other functions of the body. Even the female pattern hair loss usually happens to the thinning of the hair. Is the middle portion of the scalp. You see, it gets very less dense, so that you will see that receding of hair, and also the hairline gets bald enough. So the iron rich resources are green leafy vegetables, red meat, chicken, fish, legumes, and all. Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, so these are the what are the vital nutrients which are required for your hair to grow. And next thing is that which most of the ladies or the gents of faces is the thyroid hormonal imbalance. Right? Hormones are the few of the most essential and influential chemical messengers that pass through your body. So whoever is affected with thyroid hormonal imbalance, they start popping the pill so that to get corrected your thyroid hormones. But that is not the only solution to get your thyroid get corrected. You also need to work on your lifestyle habits, lifestyle concerns. If you're overweight, you need to work on your weight management. If you're not getting enough nutrition, you need to work on your getting the nutrition get absorbed to your body. See which parameters are not working, because if you're depending on the thyroid tablet, your thyroid hormone first of all will forget itself to produce the TSH, T3, T4 conversion and all, because it will be thinking, okay, this person is giving me thyroid tablet, thyroid replacement therapy, that will sort it out. So no need to work, and it will become sluggish. So that is the reason, if you see a person, if you ask anyone who is having thyroid, they're using for since 10 years, 15 years on the same tablet. So that is not the only the solution. Right? So that will create a bigger mess in your body. So we need to address this issue more self-solving manner by correcting our diet and activity levels predominantly. Right? And even during our pregnancy, our hair is very luscious, because we'll be giving more nutrition to our body during your pregnancy, because more to our body, that is because of your baby's health care, you will be giving more nutrition. So why can't you give the same nutrition when you are normal person too, right? so that your hair gets corrected. So I have made an effort to clearly explain why each of the hair issues happens, and also we connected to set of solutions of each issue. So I'm also sure that knowledge is not a power until you apply, right? So part of application is knowing where you stand now, nutritionally and overall healthcare. But you can also be developed in applying it. If there is any help required, you can reach out to a team. They can guide you accordingly, right? Stay connected with the person, whoever is invited you, so that they can help you out with you with other concerns. So stay healthy, happy, and look fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishnaveni Garu. That was very informative. So we'll open the house for questions. We'll have 5 minutes of question and answers. If anybody has questions, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. You can also put it on the chat box.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes. Yes.
What about gray hair?
Graying happens. If it is early graying, you can say one thing is that is because of, first thing you can say that may be because of the products you are using it, right? Shampoos.
Okay.
And also it can be a nutritional deficiency of vitamin B12. If you are not vitamin B12 deficient, please check your products if you are using the right set of products or not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any product you recommend?
That depends on the hair health and everything.
You just said if you have thyroid problem, the solution isn't going for a treatment. I mean, popping the pill, you said, right? So I have not been diagnosed, but lately I am having some symptoms which can be attributed to thyroid or pre-menopause. I'm just 43, and something else. God forbid, bone TB. I'm getting hot flashes and different symptoms. So if the person doesn't go for the treatment, then what other option do they have?
You're getting me wrong. I told that is only the not solution. You should not depend only on the treatment. As getting into treatment, not leaving it, but you need to work on your lifestyle habits also.
But initially, if the need arises, we will have to go for the treatment.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. So fine, Krishnaveni Garu, thank you very much. That was very informative, and thank you again for joining us. And we'll have more sessions like this. And hair is one part, but then we'll have to. We are doing a lot of sessions like this, so I'm sure we'll need you again for some other topic. So thank you, Krishnaveni. We'll move on to the next.
Thank you, Panil,
topic.
for the opportunity. Thank you.
Most welcome. I want to remind all of you that we all are part of a group called Fun Food and Friends, and this digital webinar, this Pan Friends, is in association with Fun Food and Friends. And the next speaker is Dipti, and she is the one who started this group called Fun Food and Friends. So she'll be talking on food for skin, and I'd like to introduce her to all of you. Dipti is currently the corporate sales manager of Goldfinch Hotels, Bangalore. She has done her hotel management from Mumbai and has a good experience in the hospitality industry. She used to conduct cooking classes for kids with focus on nutritious food and cooking without fire. She has also been featured in one of Bangalore's leading newspapers highlighting her cooking classes. So Dipti, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. We missed you last time, and so this time, welcome you to the session, and over to you for food for skin.
Thank you, Panil. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here. So let's start with the topic of the day. My first question is to you, which is the biggest organ we have? You can put your answers in the chat box. What is the largest organ we have? Most of you have answered it's skin, correct? So skin is the largest organ we all have in our body. So who doesn't want shiny and sparkling skin? So everybody wants to have a lovely, beautiful skin, isn't it? Yeah. So whatever we eat, it reflects on our skin. I hope you all agree with it. So means there are many different factors we should consider to maintain our skin. The first is you should be adequately hydrated. You should keep yourself hydrated. So for that, you should be drinking plenty of water. Our body is made up of 70% of water. So if you don't keep yourself hydrated, your skin will look very dry. Uh, and see, means if I give you an example, if we take a plant, if you don't water the plant, what will happen? Any answers? Yes, it will get dry. The similar way we have our skin. If we don't keep ourselves hydrated, obviously our skin will start looking dull. We will have dryness in our skin. We will start getting some acne. So you should keep yourselves hydrated to get a better glow and shine on your skin. Apart from that, means drinking water, you can also have juices in a day-to-day activity. You must be going to office, you must be at home, must be going out. So, but you should not forget to keep yourself hydrated. Most of the times we go to office in day-to-day activity, we forget to drink water. Many of us, in our kids also, they don't drink more water. What happens when we don't drink plenty of water? Our skin will not. Skin is made up of 70% of water tissues. If we don't have more water or any juices, liquids, automatically it will become dry. So you should have plenty of water, juices. Apart from that, you should keep your vitamins checked. As my friend Krishnavini also informed about us about the nutritional values. So similar way, we should take care of the nutrition factor. So vitamin A is very, very important for your skin. And vitamin A and E, vitamin C, which is predominantly important for your skin. Vitamin A usually we get from carrots, the red and orange vegetables and fruits. So the more you eat carrots, tomatoes, pumpkins, fruits like oranges, mango, papaya. So these are rich in vitamin A, and vitamin A is very, very important for your skin. Um, you can also make juices out of it. You can eat salads on your day-to-day activity, daily activity. So your diet should be balanced. So it should not be having more of rice. In our day-to-day activities, what we do, whatever is easy for us, we eat more rice, chapati, bas ho gaya. We will wrap it up with sabzi and roti. That's it. And we are not eating adequate quantity of nutrients. So that affects your skin. If you're not having enough of water, if you're not having enough of sabzi, if you're not having salads. So why I'm suggesting you to eat salads, leafy vegetables, it helps to cleanse your body. So how much ever you cleanse your body, the toxics will eliminate from your body, and you will have the absorption of nutrients will be much better. Apart from vitamin A, vitamin E is a fat soluble vitamin which is very, very important for your skin, and you will get it from olives, butter fruits, So all these things you can incorporate in your diet. Olive oil you can incorporate in your daily salads. So it helps to rejuvenate your skin. Apart from that, seafood is also rich source of vitamin E. Some fishes are rich in vitamin E, so the non-vegetarian people can have that. Uh, you should also have adequate amount of zinc. The zinc, why I'm telling you zinc and vitamin C, it helps you to boost your immunity. When you have zinc and vitamin C, your immunity is good. You won't be prone to any illnesses or any allergies. When you are away from the allergies, automatically you will have a good skin. It automatically reflects on your skin. Apart from that, you can have leafy vegetables. Leafy vegetables are rich in iron, vitamin C, vitamin D, so calcium. So all these things are, all the vitamins are very, very necessary for your day-to-day activities. It will give you energy, plus your blood flow will be good. So blood circulation, if the blood circulation is good, the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood cells to your skin is good, and then you will have a glowing and shiny skin. I hope I am clear about it. Any so this is the basic thing I wanted to tell you. Apart from that, you have to take care of your skin on day-to-day activity. We are prone to a lot of pollution, so you should wash your face twice a day, twice or thrice a day. And you should drink plenty of water. You have to keep yourself skin moisturized. Also, in now the winter is coming, many of us will be facing the dry skin problems. So you should have the essential nutrients, like you should have nuts like walnuts, cashew nuts, almonds. So you should incorporate these nuts as well as the seeds like sunflower seeds in your diet. So it will give you naturally the fattening fat, means natural fatness, which gives you smoothing for your skin. So these you can make laddus out of it. Now you must have seen the North Indian peoples are making laddus out of this. Panjri is also made. They make. So these things you should keep incorporating in your diet, and you should avoid oily foods as well as the foods which are very, very high in glycemic index, like you should avoid pizzas, breads, which are high with means the foods which are made up of maida. So maida you should keep, you should avoid, because how much ever you have this pizzas, burgers, sometimes it's okay. Oily foods will automatically you will have the problems like acne and all those things. So you should keep away all these foods. Keep yourself hydrated. Keep your diet high in fiber. You should eat a lot of fruits, and you should have healthy lifestyle. Exercise is must. So these are the things I would like to share with you for the healthy skin.
Thank you, Dipti. Yes, we will take questions. I also have a few questions, but we'll open it to the house. Yeah, there is one question in the chat box. It says, how to reduce excessive oily skin?
See, for that, see what you eat, that comes on your skin. Like to reduce your oily skin, you should have you should have good amount of salads, juices. Your water intake should be correct, and you should have green leafy vegetables.
Any quantity or any like how long would it take to reduce the oily skin If
It
we
depends on person to person, but you should have at least 2 to 3 liters of water every day. So once you start taking the water, and you should incorporate fruits in your diet. So it depends on person to person how long it takes, and the lifestyle. You should also take enough of good sleep.
Can I add to this oily skin question? Can I just add a point there, if
Yes,
it's okay
please.
with Deepthi?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So the thing with oily skin is that we face oily skin only on the face, right? Rest of the body, your skin doesn't generate oil, right? Like how it is on the face. And in most cases, oily skin on the face can be at the T-zone, which is your forehead and nose, or in some cases, it's also around the entire face. Now, why do we have oily skin? It's because we have a higher content of oil being generated through our sebaceous glands, right? So this can be an irritant to people, especially women. Men are still okay, I guess, but women feel a little irritated with it. So there are different things, like Deepthi suggested you change. You need to increase your fruit vegetable intake, okay, but please understand, with oily skin it's also a blessing in disguise, because you don't tend to look older. You will age very slowly with oily skin because your face is constantly being moisturized, okay. So look at it from that perspective. But also you must understand that with oil, the sebaceous gland generating that much oil, you need to constantly keep your face clean. By clean, it means that you go in for natural sprays, which one you can mix aloe vera and rose water and glycerine in a spray bottle and keep spraying it, and keep dabbing your face with cotton tissues and things like that. So that way you will get your oil content on the face on a day-to-day basis can be managed. If not reduced, it can be managed. Plus you're also getting hydration from aloe vera and rose water and glycerin, so it keeps your face in check. But in reality, while you change your diet, your oily skin will not go away overnight. It will take many months or perhaps a few years for it to go away. So it's very important to not spend too much of your time and stressing about, oh, I have oily skin. But how is it that you can manage oily skin is a better way of looking at it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the information.
My pleasure. I just thought I could add a little more
Thank you,
to it.
Apeksha. That was you, right? Apeksha?
Yeah. That was me. I didn't put my
Your
video
camera.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dipti, I wanted to ask a question.
Yeah.
I've heard that ajwain, drinking ajwain water is good for the skin. Is it true, or is it ajwain water?
See, it is, it is good for your health. It is an antioxidant. So it is always good. You can have that.
Okay.
Can I add to this point, Daniel?
Yes,
Sorry.
yes, Apeksha, please.
See, what happens when you have ajwain water is that it works on your digestive system. Okay, your colon, the entire digestive system is managed and maintained when you have ajwain. Ajwain is nothing but your carom seeds. It's a digestive, so that's why when you have a lot of oily food and fatty food, or foods that can cause flatulence, people put ajwain so that your digestive tract can be taken care of. So when you have ajwain water, or we call it oma, right? Oma in Telugu and Kannada. And when you have oma, a lot of your digestive related issues get taken care of. So when that is taken care of, what happens is your skin automatically reflects good energies, right? So if that happens, your skin looks good. So it's all got to do with the internal cleansing of the system. So anything that you do, any kind of clean eating will always make your skin and hair look good. And I'm sure Krishnaveni and Deepthi will agree to that. So it's not something superficial, but it's a lot that goes on internally.
There's one more question. What about dry skin due to diabetes? Anyone can take it. Dipti, you can take. Krishnaveni, Apeksha, anybody can take.
So I would like to take that.
Dipti, if you're okay, Krish
If you're
wants to-
okay,
Yeah,
Dipti.
yeah, sure, please.
So dry skin because of diabetes. First thing is that the root cause is diabetes, right? You need to work on your the root, then your skin will be proper. If you're taking care of your sugar levels, blood sugar levels stable enough, having enough protein, fiber rich, and right amount of fruits and vegetables, and also having salads, as Deepti mentioned, to get enough amount of fiber, right? So that will help you to cleanse your body, and also that is an internal external reflection to your skin, and also having good amount of water on a regular basis, right? Now it is a winter season. Tell me how many of you are drinking 2.5 to 3 liters of water every day, right? That's good, Vaibhavi. But apart from Vaibhavi, who are taking it? Tell me. Out of 25 people, even I miss. I honestly say that even I miss it, right? Great Kasturi Garu. So it is like you need to have enough amount of water so that you will get enough nourishment to your skin to dry to reduce the dryness, and also usage of right amount of skincare products so that you can see the good nourishment to your skin on the external side also. It's not only the food, but also you need to use the right amount of skincare products too, which suits your skin.
So if there are no questions, we'll move on to the next session. Yes. So thank you, Dipti. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would you like
Thank
to
you.
add a few words?
Thank you so much. It was great to be with you all. And it is a very, very informative session. Even I'm able to learn many things. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dipti, and we will see you again sometime for our few of our next sessions. Yeah. So our next speaker is Apeksha, who also answered a few questions some time back. So Apeksha is a good friend of mine. We were classmates in school. So Apeksha, thank you very much for joining us, and she will be speaking on food for inflammation. I will like to introduce Apeksha is currently a project manager at Next Wealth Bangalore. Since her childhood, she has been influenced with alternate ways of healing and clean eating. She is a foodie, enjoys the food, and more importantly, she understands food scientifically. She is also an entrepreneur and likes theater. According to her, it's your food that heals you. Apeksha, welcome to our second session on food. Over to you to speak about food for inflammation.
Thank you so much, panel. And thank you, everybody, for taking your time off on a Saturday afternoon. It's a lovely day outside, and I'm sure you'd want to take a nap. But thank you for attending this session. And this is my first time that I'm actually shall be sharing my little journey in food from the time that we were children, and how our parents oriented us towards healing with foods at home, right? And I'm sure all of us as Indians, Indian families, we've grown up understanding that, okay, if you have this problem, you do that. And then it's all about home remedies that we've picked up, right? And as a personal interest, I thought it was good to use food to heal yourself, because today with the kind of lifestyles that we are leading, it's not a very happy place to be in. While our lifespan has increased, it's not just been a very good place in terms of the nutrition that we're getting. Lifestyles have become very easy and convenient and all of that, right? And it's leading to a lot more of new diseases and things that we didn't see in our parents' generation. We're seeing it in our generation. Okay, I've just made one little document to talk about inflammation. I'd like to share that with you. Just 1 second. Can you all see my screen? Can somebody say yes or no?
Yes, Apeksha.
Okay, thanks, Krishna. Okay, so I just wanted to just put this thing in front of you so that, you know, when I'm talking, it also kind of registers. So what is inflammation? We all know inflammation in different forms. Maybe when we have a problem with our body, like we go bang ourselves against something and then your body kind of swells in that space, right? Like if you your elbow hits something and your elbow swells up and it becomes red and there is pain. So you know inflammation of that level, right? But actually inflammation is really of two types. One is an internal inflammation and one is an external inflammation. When we are talking about internal inflammations, it's something that we call it as an acute condition. It could be anything. You get cold, you get cough. These are all little signs of internal inflammation. And there's an external one, which I told you about, an injury that we have, or a, some kind of a external thing that impacts our body is an external inflammation. So inflammation typically has been picked up from this Latin word, which means to set on fire. Okay, so even when you use your spoken English, you say inflamed, there were flames. So it's basically setting on fire. So what happens? The body shows signals of swelling, it shows signals of pain, it shows signals of being red. These are all your signals or symptoms of a certain inflammation that has happened. Now, is inflammation good or bad is the question. It is always a first level of defense. So inflammation is good. It protects you from a certain condition that can prevail further. Okay. So when you're talking about getting impacted with a bang, right? Your hand or your leg or some other body part is inflamed, it's swollen. It's basically saying that, okay, I have protected. Okay. So this whole process of inflammation, it says, I am protecting the body from further damage. Therefore, I will stop the damage on a physical level, which is your skin getting affected. But, and because also inflammation is such that after a while, it heals itself because the body has its mechanism to heal itself. You move on. Okay. Now in an internal, let's just break this down into an internal inflammation. External, we've all understood. We've figured that out. We most of the times as children, as adults, we all go through it, right? Internal inflammation, let's look at that. There's something, well, like I already told you about this acute condition. Acute condition is something that also is the first level of defense inside your body, where there is an inflammation, it attacks, and whatever is attacking your body through an infection, okay, it heals itself and it moves on. Now, this acute condition, when it becomes chronic, is when we go through a lot of problems. Okay, I'm just going to scroll down and tell you what a chronic inflammation can do. So it is anything to do with any kind of a disease in your body, right? It could be your heart disease, cancer, asthma, enlargement of organs, periodontal issues, gut, respiratory, pulmonary issues, aging, bone disorders. All these are a result of inflammation. Okay, so you have a disease, it's because the first line of acute inflammation has become chronic and therefore you are suffering of a disease in you. Okay, so there are multiple issues. So like if for instance, if we have to just take IBS, okay, irritable bowel system. Okay, some of us know of it because we either suffer of it or we know somebody as our loved ones is suffering of IBS. What is IBS? The immediate reaction of an IBS is you eat something and you are running to your loo. Basically, the body doesn't keep the food anymore. There is a reaction that is happening and then you're running to the loo to release whatever you've eaten, right? So what happens in the case of IBS and how is it related to inflammation? Okay, so let's start with the first part of it. When you eat your food, okay, you eat your food, most of us don't even concentrate on what we are eating, right? We are excited about what's in our plate because it could be a nice plate of chaat, or it could be a burger, or it could be anything you like, right? You're excited from that point of view. After that, you eat it. When you eat it, what happens? You're not eating it right. Okay, so then in many cases, the food goes into the system, and between your intestinal structure, large and small intestinal structure, the small intestine is the one that actually does the great job of transmitting all what you've eaten into your blood system, which means the digestion happens right until the large intestine. After that, the nutrients get processed in the small intestine, and that's where it sends it into your blood. Now, in the case of an IBS system, for whatever reason, the food has not been digested well. Okay, so those chunks of little food particles go into your small intestine, and your small intestine is sending it back into your blood. Now, your blood is supposed to only have it's supposed to have a liquidated system going in it, right? It can't have little pieces of food going in it. So then there is the body fighting a mechanism. There is a defense mechanism that's happening. While you should have ideally the digestive part, the nutrients entering your bloodstream. Now you're having food particles entering your bloodstream, and there is a fight that's happening in the body. So therefore, what happens? Immediately you are having issues of it in terms of an IBS system. Okay, so you then go back and then you're taking medication and you're doing all of it. But if you actually realize it's actually a very lifestyle related disease, right? Where perhaps you've not, your absorption in the body is not being good. That would be one of the reasons. The other reason is that you've not chewed your food enough. Okay, your first level of digestion happens with the mouth. Your mouth has got its saliva. It's suppose the saliva is the one that actually disintegrates food to the largest level possible. But we don't. We just chew. We just eat for the sake of eating, and then it just goes. We think, okay, the stomach will take care of it, but it doesn't. In some cases, it leads to IBS. Similarly, everything around it could be bone disorders, it could be cancer, it could be asthma, everything, right? What is cancer? Cancer is something where you have the body's fighting mechanism is not strong enough because of a certain infection. Why did that infection happen? Okay, for various reasons. So let's just go back to seeing what are those reasons that cause all of these diseases. All of us are aware of it. We know about it day in and day out. Smoking is one. It could be both active and passive smoking. Then consumption of alcohol. Once in a while, we'll say, okay, I can have a drink and I'll be all right. But then there are a lot of people who get addicted to alcohol, and for them, it's an everyday affair. And sometimes it's almost through the day kind of a thing, right? Then eating refined foods and sugars, processed foods, especially processed meats like your sausages and, things like that. Being overweight. Then, excessive training. When I say training, it could be going into the gym and overtraining yourself. That's also not good. No late nights. And when we say late nights, it's because you come back home and you sleep late. And when you sleep late, your organs are supposed to be working, getting their bit of energy and their bit of action only in the night when you're actually in rest, because that's when your organs are supposed to be doing their functions. But if you're going to sleep late, everything is going to affect your organs. Then overexposure to X-rays and sunlight, like a lot of people who spend a lot of their time, physical time, in the harsh rays of the sun because of the UV rays connecting you. So these are all the things that could lead to a certain inflammatory issue. Okay, so there again, then you say, okay, now how do I get rid of all this? You must understand, as much as inflammation is your first line of defense to the body fighting off some kind of an infection or injury, you must understand it needs that kind of energy to fight it all out. How do the foods help? Simple. Eat what is available locally. We don't have to run behind a quinoa. We don't have to run behind a blueberry or any of those berries that are not native to India. Eat what you're used to eating, and eat locally produced food. Eat seasonally available food. It could be your fruits, vegetables, whatever. You don't have to eat apple when it's not in the season. You don't have to eat watermelons in winter, because today the way consumption and this whole commercialization of food and availability has been driven in the world over. It's not good to eat watermelon in December, but if you go to the market, you will see watermelon coming out in December. And if I know a yellow watermelon does not grow in my land, why should I get a yellow watermelon and eat it? Let me eat the red watermelon that grows in summer, because nature has created fruits and vegetables to be in a certain part of the season because it helps the body recover. We get amla in winter. We get amla from the rainy season to winter because that's the time your body is most prone to infections, right? So eating amla gives you the highest vitamin C, and vitamin C is excellent because it alkalizes your body. It gives you immunity to fight all colds and coughs and other infection. Right? And so therefore you must understand that and do what is needed. Buy greens. Greens come out the best in the winter time. So have as much as greens possible. Right? So here I've just listed out something that we all know. We are talking about growing local fruits and vegetables, eating only that, green leafy and cruciferous vegetables. Again, it could be your cruciferous vegetables are cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli. So while we list out a whole list of vegetables and fruits, please also go back and see if you are a diabetic, if you have a certain blood pressure issue, if you have a certain kidney issue, eat only what is recommended for you. Because today, we've all all been attacked with lifestyle diseases. So you must be able to break down and see what is it that works for you and what is it that doesn't work for you. Protein is very important. Like Krishnaveni did speak to us about having the right amount of protein, because protein is, it helps generate better. So your organs start working better. Yeah, the new life inside the body comes with protein. Okay. Spices, especially for inflammation, spices like ginger, pepper, cloves, turmeric, excellent. We make kashayams in South India, we call them kashayams, but in North India, you call it kadhas. Make a drink of all this, because this goes and keeps your organs going well. Then it's important to have your omega-3 fatty acids. It's come from fish, it comes from walnuts, it comes from nuts. So it's important to have that. Cold pressed oils. See, today, one of the biggest issues that we are facing is of the refined oils that we consume. And because of those refined oils being used multiple times, it really is something that's infecting a lot of our bodies. We do not understand it because we don't see symptoms immediately, but it's also, it has a slow effect on our bodies, and that is causing a lot of problems. And cancer is one of the reasons why, refined oils is one of the reasons for cancer being a part of it. So have cold pressed or wood pressed oils, green tea and black teas and whatever that you can have, nuts and dry fruits. Very important. Again, nuts and dry fruits have this thing called phytates in them. It's important to soak them overnight and consume them in the morning. So, so that way you don't have to worry about it, because they also impact your digestion. So it's important to soak them and have them. So these are the couple of things that we need to understand how we can work around building a good immunity in our body. And when I say immunity, it's not because of the external cough, cold, fever, but immunity against anything that can impact our body, right? And today with Corona and everything else, please be very careful about what you eat and drink and all of that, so that your body is constantly looked after and you don't have to make a hospital visit. Now, a couple of lifestyle changes are very, very important. I don't know if all of us follow it. It's good to reiterate it. We might know all of it. Okay. Change the way we eat. You know, my dad would always tell us as kids, drink your food and eat your water. When you say drink your food, it means chew so well that your food just has to go down the pipe without it going in as chunks of food. It just becomes so digested and it becomes like a liquid when we say drink your food. Eat your water, don't gulp water. Drink water slowly, sip it. Sipping is very important, because also it's important that when you're eating your food, you don't dilute your digestion process by drinking a lot of water. Okay, so have water 30 minutes before your meals and have water again 30 minutes after your meals. Okay, so many times when we go out, we'll say, oh, what is it that you're eating? Okay, we'll say, let's eat noodles. And then you want to order a drink alongside it. This is all just consumerism, it's all commercialism. So just watch out what you're eating when you eat outside. Don't necessarily fill yourself with milkshakes and drinks and sodas and all of that, because you're hampering what you're eating. Okay. Nature bathing. So in Japan, there is some concept called forest bathing. I've put it as nature bathing here, but there's something called forest bathing. What happens is, Japan, as all of you know, is a little tiny country. Too many people, less space, but they're living in a very harmonious way with nature. So what they do is every weekends they drive down to the nearest forest or nearest park, and they spend a couple of hours just meditating there, or they're quietly reading a book. They're de-stressing their life. And the more you involve yourself with nature, the better it is, because everything that has to do with good health comes from nature, be it the fresh supply of oxygen, because oxygen is so important for your organs to run well. Okay, it's not because we get that prana and we are surviving. It's not because of that. Oxygen is very, very important for every cell in our body to actually function very well. So nature bathing is very important. Go to a park, go to any place that you find has more than 10 trees, sit there and relax yourself. Don't go there listening to loud music. Don't go there with with stress in your head, but go there to de-stress yourself. Meditation, all of you all know, every day, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour of meditation is fantastic to the mind and body. Dry fasting is, so most Hindu families have this thing called Ekadashi fasting, right? So what do? You fast on those days without eating. Okay, some families also resort to eating certain types of foods, but I will not talk about that. But dry fasting is very important because your body has eaten enough in its lifetime. Okay, if you don't eat a meal one day is fine, but what it does is the body starts, the circulation gets better because the body knows food is not coming in today. But what do? I start tapping all the energies, everything that is sitting somewhere dormant in my body, so my circulation gets better, and the stomach is resting, the acids are all resting there, everything is going through its rest period if you do this kind of fasting. And normally you have Ekadashi fasting every 2 weeks in a month, so it's bi-monthly. So the body is getting its rest. It doesn't need to eat, it doesn't need to do extra work, but what it is doing is it's working on what is available already inside, stored. Okay, intermittent fasting, I've written IF over there. Intermittent fasting is also a good way to start. Everyone knows about it. You all can go and study a little more about it. And lastly, but least, is physical activity. Go for your walk, do a yoga session in the morning for about 45 minutes to an hour, do your pranayama, do any kind of a gym activity, but don't overstress yourself. These things are important because, like you, as much as you live, your organs help you live, and your organs also need exercises. Your organ needs to breathe, and if all of them are working together, you are in a healthy state. But if they're not working together, that's when you get into all of this. So this is really what I wanted to share from what inflammation means. It's in a very brief note, but while I was doing a lot of study around inflammation, I also realized that different foods have different chemical compositions and nutrients that they give us. So one of the things that works really well is pomegranate. Okay. Every day, right now, pomegranates are in season. Please have a bowl full of pomegranate every day in the morning. Best time is to have it in the morning, before your breakfast or after breakfast. Have a juice of pomegranate. It's extremely good for both diabetics and all people. So pomegranate is one of those non-fussy fruits. It doesn't really trouble you too much. Okay. Also, I'd like to just say, unless you have severe kidney issues, perhaps maybe you can stop. You don't have to have pomegranate, but it really helps fight cholesterol. It helps fight, inflammation, because there is it really goes to the lowest level and helps a lowest level matlab at your cell level, and it helps your cell regenerate all the time. And it's got it really helps with people who have diabetes. It helps a lot of cancer patients. Pomegranates are fantastic for cancer patients. It's good for Alzheimer's. It helps in reducing your fatty liver, and like I said, kidney issues are something that you'll probably have to think about it before eating, but otherwise they're fantastic. Okay. And it's got flavonoids, which work well for BP, for sugar, for uterus issues, for your anybody who has a sperm issue, and osteoporosis and arthritis. So pomegranates are very good. The other thing is, you'll all be surprised if I say potato juice. Okay, so potato juice is extremely good for the body, but don't look at it saying that, oh, potato matlab calories. Calories are not for you to worry about. Getting calories out of your fruits and vegetables is absolutely okay. What you don't get calories, what you have to worry about is getting calories out of your maida, like Deepti mentioned maida, and anything to do with processed food or oily food. That is where you have to worry about. So potato juice is again a very a very iron rich and a vitamin C rich juice that you can consume. So make it in the morning, within 15-20 minutes of juicing your potato. Please consume it. It's extremely good for your health. Very high in anti-inflammatory qualities. Again, it increases circulation, and it's got very high alkaline properties. Now, you must understand the fruits and vegetables and the food that you eat has to be highly alkaline in nature, because it cuts down acidity. The moment it cuts down acidity in your body, all the infections that are growing due to the acidic nature of the food you're eating. And when I say acidity, it's not your stomach acidity. I'm talking about the acidic nature of food. Okay, so pomegranate, lemons, potato juice, they really cut down the acidic nature of the food or the acidic nature of your system. Okay, the moment you become alkaline, half your diseases are taken care of. Okay, and again, now what does potato juice help in? It helps in reducing your cholesterol, very good in detoxification of kidney, liver, and the heart. It's got high potassium, so people who have issues with potassium may want to stay away from potato juice. And extremely good for your face. All of us know it's a bleaching agent for the face. So you have oily face, you have dry face, you have patchy face, apply potato juice. Okay, good for the hair as well. You can put a little potato juice in your hair, scalp, and give it a massage before you take a bath. Reduces puffiness of the face. It's and because it's high in potassium, iron, and vitamin C, it's excellent for your body. We say that to have iron, we need to have vitamin C, because iron will not be absorbed without vitamin C. So 1 glass of potato juice has enough iron and vitamin C, so you don't have to worry about saying, oh, I have iron now, how do I digest it? Because I don't have vitamin C. Nature has made it fantastic. It's got iron and vitamin C. So these are the 2 things that I wanted to share because of this weather. We have pomegranates growing and it's available. Please go ahead and get them and eat them. Either eat them or juice them, does not matter. Potato juice is very important. It's not about eating the potato, but it's important about how you juice the potato and drink it. So this is what I really thought I could share with all of you in terms of what inflammation of the body is. I hope you've got something to take home today with.
Thank you, Apeksha. That was wonderful and very informative, especially the potato part. Yeah. So someone has asked a question that they want a recipe for the potato juice.
Oh yeah, I'm seeing the chat here. It's very simple. You peel your potato. Again, potato juicing is of 2 types. If you know you're getting your potatoes from your local market, which is got full of pesticides, please peel it and then break it, cut it into pieces, run it in the mixie with a little bit of water, and you can drink it with the pulp. Okay, beat it. I mean, you don't have to strain it. Ideally, when we juice our vegetables, we do not strain the pulp out of it because it also adds to the roughage in the body. So if you want to strain it because you can't have it, it's up to you. But the nutritional level drops. But when we make potato juice, we just peel it off because we get our potatoes from the local outcomes. It's got pesticides, so we peel it and we juice it, and sometimes we add a little lemon. Just to enhance flavor. But if you want to put a little salt or kala namak, you can do that and do it. But we generally have it without anything. So that's your potato juice.
Okay, great. Somebody asked to tell a little more about intermittent fasting.
Okay, so intermittent fasting is, it really depends on what your body can manage. Okay, the way I do intermittent fasting, and this is purely out of my experience, I finish all my eating by 6:30 or 7 in the evening. I try to finish it by 6:30, and then my next meal is at about 10 or 10:30 the next morning. Okay, I do this because my body can generally handle itself without food. I do feel hungry, but I have a good capacity of also not eating. If I feel hungry, I have like green tea, or I make one of these fancy kashayams of mine and I have it, and I do that. But intermittent fasting is really giving your body the time to process all the food it's eaten, so that the digestion becomes better, and it's doing its function in the way it's supposed to be doing. Because today we have a lot of food available around us. It's very easy to have food. You can make a sandwich, you can eat Maggie, you can eat fruits, you can eat vegetables, you can pull something out, you can make a little pizza. There are different tricks of making quick, easy food. So food is available. There is Swiggy, there's Zomato, there's all of that, right? So there's constant greed of eating. So when you're eating, what happens is your body is constantly working. There is a digestion process that's happening. The blood is doing something. The organs are doing something. The nutrients are doing something. Everything is working in the body, and you don't really need to make your body work so much, right? So this is so intermittent fasting in that sense is, it doesn't say do an entire dry fast through the day. You eat whatever you eat maximum till 7 or 7:30 or 8 also. Okay. After that, it says do not eat. and do not sleep immediately after eating also. So you wait for a couple of hours, 2-3 hours before you sleep. So you sleep early, you get up early, and you break your fast with perhaps a juice in the morning, a vegetable juice, no fruit juice, a vegetable juice, and then you eat your first meal either at 10 or 10:30, giving yourself basically about 12 to 16 hours of fasting. Okay, so it might not be very easy for many people to do it, but this is when you're fasting, your body is actually recovering from all the work that it's doing, right? When you're eating it, you're giving it a lot of work to do. So it recovers from all of that, and then you eat your first meal at 10 or 10:30. It could be a breakfast or it could be a direct lunch. Some families eat their brunch at about 10:30, 11, right? So it could be that. So you could talk to your doctors or nutritionists, or you can go on Google and understand a little more about intermittent fasting. But it's not a full fast, but it's a semi-fast in that sense. Any other questions that we have?
There's one more question in the chat box.
Yeah, so somebody has asked, Usha has asked, can people do dry fasting for migraine and gastritis? I would suggest no. Dry fasting is a tough fast, because I follow the Ekadashi fasting not because I'm extremely religious or anything. I do it because it works well within the calendar, right? Our ancestors and everybody put it together in a certain way, making it convenient for all of us. So therefore, I do Ekadashi fasting. So my Ekadashi fasting is anywhere between 36 to 40 hours, depending on when I first break my meal. So there are days I also struggle with a headache if I've not eaten. So then I try, if I can't manage, I normally break it down to eating a very light meal at the end of that Ekadashi, right? It's not easy. Especially people with migraine and gastritis, because migraine, we do not know what causes migraine in most cases. About 99% people do not know the real cause of migraine. So if a dry fasting has to be done, and if you get a migraine attack, then God save you. So it's better you don't do a dry fast, or during the dry fast, you can eat fruits and vegetables without salt. I refrain from salt because salt is something that will make you feel full, and then if you make yourself feel full, there's no point of doing a fast, right? Fasting is also building on willpower. So you can eat fruits perhaps, and maybe cucumber or something like that, cucumber, tomato and things like that. But if you have a migraine that happens just like that at for no reason, then I would not suggest dry fasting. And gastritis also, it depends. If you have a big case of acidity, please do not do dry fasting, because for acidity you need to eat your meals on time. So instead you eat a more cleaner meal, so let that be your system to your method to making your gastritis better.
Yeah, what is your opinion on eating food kept in the fridge?
Oh, that's again. So it's a very simple thing, right? We all do it. I do it at home. We keep food in our fridge and we eat it the next day. But please understand the simple sense of food. You are making a dish, okay? And when does food get spoiled? Food gets spoiled when there's a certain bacteria attack, and that could happen because of humidity. It could happen because, different reasons, right? And we're using different chemical compositions to make your food. When I say chemical composition, it's got oil, it's got salt, chili powder, all of those things. And then we are taking a vegetable that was probably plucked about 3 days back from a field, and it's brought to your home. And then, you keep it another 2-3 days, and then you cook a vegetable and you eat. So there's basically a difference of 1 week to 10 days before you actually make your vegetables, unless it's farm fresh and literally plucked. So what is happening in the process? The lifespan of that, or let's not call it a lifespan, the timeline of that thing which is dead and is getting increased. So you're cooking, you're eating. At the time that you cook and eat, it's fine. But we keep it in the fridge. And what does a fridge do? It reduces the temperature so that the food doesn't develop bacteria. Correct. So when the food doesn't develop bacteria, you think, it's okay, I can reheat the food and eat it. But technically, if you didn't have a fridge, your food would have developed that bacteria any which ways. So the function of bacteria developing into that food is anyway going to happen. It's just that we are controlling it artificially by means of putting it in the fridge, right? So when that happens, anyway, your food is getting damaged. So any which ways, it's not good to eat. But having said all of that, we still do that. And what's worse is with non-vegetarian. We put non-vegetarian food in the fridge. One is it's dead. God knows when the animal got killed and when did it come to you, and you work on that food, you eat it, and it's extremely tasty. You like your food, but you put it back in the fridge and you eat it for 2-3 days. And God knows what bacteria is actually building onto it. We don't know, because it doesn't smell, it doesn't taste bad. You think it's good to reheat and eat. Ideally, it should not. It's not a good practice to keep food in the fridge.
Okay, so we'll take this last question. Are supplements required to manage protein?
So it depends, right? If you're very mindful about the food you're eating, nature has given us enough to manage with what is available, right? The non-vegetarians will fight and say, "Oh, we get protein comes only when you eat meats and fish and chicken and all of that." Vegetarians will say, "I am a vegetarian. I am still a bodybuilder, and look at me, I'm doing well," right? So if you have a good life condition, if your health is good, you can get everything from nature and you can eat. Like Krishnaveni told earlier, that supplements are needed when the levels drop. It could be that your vitamin D level drops, or your B complex level drops, or vitamin C level drops. Then you need supplements, you need a shot. I went through a situation when my vitamin D was extremely low. I was at a count of 3. When the doctor saw me, he said, "I don't even know how you're surviving." Right? So I had to take injections. And then I had to take this vitamin D tablets for the next 60 days after taking that injection, because I was at such a low level and I did not know what was the reason. Simple. I didn't go and sit in the sun. Sun is your biggest vitamin D generator. We didn't do that, right? So somewhere our lifestyle is impacting us on all of that. So supplements are needed when you know your readings are bad and they're low. So then you take it. Otherwise, I think if you eat a very well-balanced diet, and as as adults, you figured out your body by now. You know what works for your body and what doesn't work for your body. So play accordingly, and then decide what you want to eat and how you need to eat it. We have to be very mindful about what we eat.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Thank you.
Somebody's put a question here. Sorry, should I just go ahead?
Yeah, take the question. No problem.
Okay, can insulin-dependent diabetes do IF? Would it not be harmful? Ideally, this is something you should check with your doctor, because see, diabetes, as I know, requires a certain routine and a certain discipline to be maintaining your insulin levels, which means you eat on time and you eat the right foods. You don't eat high glycemic index foods. You don't eat high calorie foods. Basically, high GI means high calories, right? So if you need high calories, you need to have that insulin to break it down. So you don't have all of that. So ideally, intermittent fasting, maybe you don't have to do 16-hour intermittent fasting. You could do 12 hours of intermittent fasting. Normally, we have a break of 8 hours, right? Our breakfast is after 8 hours, right? So you could probably do 12 hours, which is anyway within the rhythm of how you eat your meals and things like that. Maybe 12 hours would be okay. But again, as a diabetic, very, very important to check with your diabetologist or your doctor, because you can't mess around when you have a condition like that, because diabetes also leads to multiple other smaller, it has a connective ailment related issues. So it's better you check with them. But between 12 hours of IF, I think you should be able to manage.
Okay, great. Thank you, Apeksha. That was very informative. I'm sure everybody enjoyed that session. Thank you very
so
much for.
Thanks everybody for your time. Thank you. And
thank you. So yes, so I'm going to get myself some potatoes and I'm going to make that juice.
Yes.
There was something that was that I think many of us didn't know.
I didn't know too. So I've been doing my research. I make little notes and I keep it. So I realized that all this is fantastic.
Okay, great. So thank you once again, Apeksha. We'll move on to the next session, and the next session is food for the brain. And we have with us Dr. Aditya Verma. Dr. Aditya, you there, right?
Hey, yes.
Yes. So glad to have you with us, Aditya. I'll introduce Dr. Aditya to you. He's an integrative medical practitioner with focus on mental wellness passion. His passion is mind-body therapies through somatic intervention like trauma release exercise and body work. Example, craniosacral therapy with breath work. For these modalities to have optimal benefits, the physiology of the body, which is the foundation, also needs to be in optimal condition. This can be achieved through appropriate nutrition and dietary interventions. He also works with an acupressure and osteopathy-based technique known NAET, allergy elimination treatment. So a little about his background. He's an integrative medicine. He has done his integrative medicine from the Integrative Psychiatry Institute, Colorado. He has done his Tibetan medicine from Sorig Institute and mind-body medicine from BHI and Harvard Medical School. Dr. Aditya, it's a pleasure to have you with us. And over to you to speak about food for the brain.
Thank you, Penya. Hello. Hello, everybody. So I'm basically going to be building almost on what the previous speakers have already shared. So please excuse any repetitions. That's what happens when you're the last person to go. Can I share, Penya?
Yes.
As Peniel shared, the topic is food for the brain. And I think it's apt for me because to speak of what's inside the head, because what's on my head is not really great at the moment. So
yeah, you can share the screen now.
Great, thank you. So the topic is food for the brain. And of course, we have gone through the different sessions. As Peniel introduced, I practice integrative medicine. To give you a brief understanding, it is a composite of alternative medicine and conventional medicine, which is allopathy. And this is important because we do not go off conventional medicine. We stay with conventional medicine, bring in alternative, or rather, I would say traditional medicine and other aspects of medicine, and slowly wean off on conventional medicine as required. The focus of work, the whole flowchart, you can say, is the BPS model, the biopsychosocial model, where we consider the biological aspect of the individual, the psychological, as well as the social and environmental. This is what we could probably also call epigenetics, because what's happening in our genes and what's happening from the environment to our genes, the correlation between the two. Starting with food, I would like you to just reflect on one aspect. What is life? What is health? In Ayurveda, it is called Ayu. Most of us take it as Ayu means life. But Charaka says in his Samhita, he defines Ayu as Sharirendriya Sattvatma Sanyogo Dhari Jivitam Nityagaschanumbandhascha Paryayai Ayu Uchyate. Meaning, Ayu is the conjunction, it's a whole interplay between Sharira, the body, Indriya, our senses, Sattva, our mind, and Atma, the soul. So I will not be touching Atma, but I'll be touching on all the other three components. It is Nityag. It is Nitya as in continuum. It is ever flowing. Our Ayu. It is Anubandha. It is interdependent, which is, you can say, epigenetic. We are dependent on the environment. It's the interdependence, not dependence. I would like you to have a look at this tanka. This is from the traditional Tibetan medicine known as Soba Rigpa. And just going through this, it's like this is a basic of Tibetan medicine. We start with this tanka to understand health and what do we require for health. The central figure, sorry, I'm still getting used to this device. Yes. So the central figure is the medicine Buddha. And I hope you can see the surroundings. It is all plants, it's nature. And these are not just the medicinal plants, these are also the regular foods that we use, the plants which we use in the kitchen. So traditional medicine is seeped in what is in your kitchen, starting from the kitchen and then going outward to find if your kitchen doesn't help you. Let's start with, how do we say what is food for the brain? The simplest concept is comfort foods. How many of you feel good with certain food? How many of you go to a certain food when you are feeling uncomfortable? Not when you're feeling under the weather. I don't know if I can see the chat. Or maybe we can go through that later. So comfort foods can come from, we can approach it, understanding it from two angles, psychological and physiological. There are some foods which are associated with fond memories. For example, for me, it is idli and dosa. It is a reminder of childhood where things were, so easy. And every morning was idli and dosa. The other aspect, physiological aspect, is foods which help produce either the neurotransmitters, which are the feel-good neurotransmitters, or a hyperactive component, which is histamine, which happens in allergies also. So the first feel-good that I want to start with is the neurotransmitter serotonin. Now, serotonin, a neurotransmitter which gives us the feel-good experience, the stable experience and contentment. It is interesting to note that 90% of its production is in the gut. And what are the foods which help? Fiber-rich foods, vegetables. If we look at the Western component, it's broccoli. Let's look at the Indian component, beetroot, carrot, all these things. Fiber-rich foods. Fruits, for example, figs, healthy fats such as the omega-3 fatty acids, salmon and other fish, brown rice. So basically here what we are looking at is serotonin, is fiber-rich foods. Because serotonin is produced in conjunction with microbes, the bacteria in our gut. And for these bacteria to survive, we need fiber. When we do not take enough fiber, the bacteria cannot survive. And the bacteria do not survive, there is no serotonin, and there we are going into depression, taking up SSRIs. Instead of that, let's start with fiber-rich foods. I don't mean go off SSRIs, please. Start with fiber-rich foods and see what changes come to you. The second is dopamine, the motivation, the pleasure and reward chemical. And this also has 50% of its production in the gut. And you can see the kind of foods. These are just a few examples. These are not like only these help you for dopamine. These foods, coffee, tea, eggs, pork, chocolate, cheese, they give a help produce dopamine. Now we come to histamine. This is produced in the body when we have allergies or certain foods. The action of this is mimics ADHD, which is the attention deficit hyperactive disorder, or OCD, the obsessive compulsive disorder. And it gives a tendency to addiction. The foods which I mentioned down here, tofu, soy sauce, cheese, mushroom, chocolate, sauerkraut. I'm not saying these are bad foods. These foods in excess, point one. Point two, if our body physiology is not able to digest this, if there is a deficit in my gut, in my immune system, and I guess here is where we have an answer to one of the questions from the previous talk, leftovers in the fridge. bacteria develop, as Apeksha had shared. Bacteria develop and that produces excess histamine. Two studies I would like to quote here. High comorbidities exist between certain psychiatric symptoms and GI disorders. A well-known example being anxiety and IBS, Reber 2012. A serotonin dysfunction in the GI system could result in impairments in brain function, such as those involved in mood, sleep, and behavior. There are many studies, I'm just quoting two of them. And that is the reason the gut is known as the second brain. It has a whole network of nerves, and it's called the enteric nervous system. It directly affects the brain. How does that happen?
Aditya, can I just interrupt?
Yes, please.
Is your PPT supposed to move or because
Oh, is it stuck, is it?
Yeah, it's on this first slide.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Right. All right, so let me get back to the BPS model because this is significant. Integrative medicine works on the BPS model, which is a biopsychosocial model, where we look at the biology of the individual, psychology, the social condition, the environment, the lifestyle of the person. And this is the quote I had shared from Charaka. And here is the Thangka, the mandala of medicine Buddha from Tibetan medicine. If you can look at the borders here, these are all medicinal plants which have very specific effects on the system. And having to go through that would take 1 hour by itself. So I jump to comfort foods, back to comfort foods, and voila, serotonin. So serotonin, like I mentioned, 90% is produced in the gut, and we need fiber-rich foods for this. And dopamine, 50% in the gut, 50% in the frontal cortex. The foods which work on this is coffee, tea, eggs, pork, chocolate, and cheese. And the next is histamine. Now, these are the two studies I had mentioned. Now we get to the gut-brain connection. On the left, you see the healthy gut function. It has a good, this has a normal gut microbes. The microbes in the gut are the, what are called the commensal microbes, and their presence helps production of serotonin and dopamine, which gives rise to a healthy central nervous system function. An abnormal gut function does not help produce enough serotonin or dopamine. Therefore, we have abnormal CNS function. These microbes in our body are known as commensals. Commensal is about a symbiotic relationship. We eat foods which help the bacteria to grow, the colonies to grow, and they help produce the neurotransmitters in our system. This is a symbiosis we live in. What is happening now? There has been a significant loss of diversity in our gut because of our food, the lifestyle. The number of bacteria are reducing, and keystone bacteria, those which are very essential to our system, are also disappearing. And this is what is called the leaky gut. Leaky gut leading to leaky brain. What is the leaky gut? If you have a look at this, looking to the left of the slide, you will see the cells are tightly packed. Whereas as you come to the other side, the cells seem to have spaces in between them. This is the leak which is happening. Now, a high-fat, low-fiber diet is not being conducive to the normal gut microbes. So the normal residents of our gut are disappearing. And when the normal microbes disappear, the pathogenic bacteria start to grow. Because our gut, like our whole body, our whole system is homeostasis, a balance. Everything is balancing the other. If I were to kick off the balance, the pathogenic strains start. So point one, the bacteria which were helping me have been kicked out. So I'm having pathogenic bacteria in my gut. Two, the pathogenic bacteria are creating their own chemicals which are causing the junctions between the cells to disappear. They are breaking it down. So my cells in the gut which were together are now apart. When they were together, only that which was essential was entering into my bloodstream. But with them apart, many foreign invaders are moving in. Now, and one of them is gluten. This is gluten intolerance. Gluten per se doesn't affect our body because our body does not absorb it in its natural state. But when you have a leaky gut, the gluten goes in. So wheat is not bad. Something is wrong with us. It's not what is outside. So when these molecules enter the blood vessel, my body does not recognize them. It says, I am under attack. This is not the normal nutrition I was getting. And there starts a whole process of inflammation because there is a fight going on now. Antibodies are produced to work against these foreign molecules which are entering my system. But there is no microbe. There is no irritating factor as such which can be wiped out. And yet the war continues, and that leads to the inflammation all over the body and also starts to manifest in the brain because the junctions that we have in the gut are similar to the blood-brain barrier in the brain. So whatever is leaking into my gut, through my gut into my blood system is now moving into my brain also because the protection, the defense is gone. So what do we do about this? The first thing is to recognize what is off balance. It may be a food allergy, food intolerance. It may be a deficit or a disorder in my liver function. It could be so many factors. So first thing to recognize is what is off balance. Once I know it, you can do this through, of course, your regular blood tests, check your inflammation levels, etc., plus food sensitivity test, allergy test, and remove them, reduce exposure to these, which are affecting our microbiome. The next step is to repair. Once I have removed the offensive, I start to repair. Calm, nourish, and soothe the gut. Once it is calm, once it's soothed, I can replace what has been lost. I started with fiber and digestive enzymes, which are known, the fiber are known as probiotics. Prebiotics, I'm sorry, I got this wrong. And then I repopulate it with probiotics. And concurrently work on restoring the spirit, which is the stress or mood management. So what we eat makes up our body. If we choose to go with the junk food, it creates inflammation and a messed up brain. We go with whole healthy foods, traditional diets, what are known as the ancient diets, like what we have in our, as the previous speakers also spoke of, go back to your traditional foods and whole foods. These help to replenish the bacteria which are lost. Once they are replenished, our neurotransmitters start coming up to the optimal levels and our brain functioning comes to its optimal. So as Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And I would like to end with a quote. Most of us think, okay, going on a diet is going to be a tedious process. It needn't be. So I end leaving you with a quote from Acharya Abhinavagupta. Your organs are gods. You should worship them with delicious food, taste, sight, smell, etc. So be good to your body will be good to you. And I mean that for me also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Aditya. We can take some questions now. Does the microbiome get depleted due to eating junk food?
Yes, Rakesh. Junk food is basically refined food, processed food. So there is not much fiber in there. Point one. Plus the processing, the chemicals, they themselves also, besides loss of fiber, less fiber, the chemicals, the processed chemicals, etc., also attack the cells of the gut.
What is the impact of how long does it take to replenish? Replenish.
To replenish.
Replenish, okay.
To replenish now, this you will have to go on that last part which I shared about, first recognize what's wrong, figure out what it is that is affecting your system, and then we do basically introduce fiber, soothe the gut. The whole process can take a long time. It depends on how bad is the condition. The impact of antihistamines on the gut. The antihistamines will be in the blood and not in the gut. It will lead to all these hyperactivities in our mind. How can we eat friendly bacteria? We can have it through good old curd rice. And then you have vinegar. But I would like to add here, these cannot be a generic, I can call it, let's call it prescription. It cannot be a generic prescription for all, because what's good for one is not really great for the other. So you have to look at your system and then figure it out. But friendly bacteria will grow by itself first when you start having good fiber. Two, when you start taking, say, like Sporlac or any other of those probiotic powders. Kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha.
Doctor, may I add one point here on
Yes,
building friendly bacteria? So you can also have apple cider vinegar, which has this mother bacteria. It's called apple cider vinegar with mother, which means there is a bacteria in it as well. So if you take 1 spoon of apple cider vinegar, dilute it with 3 spoons of water, and you can have it maybe perhaps about 30 or 40 minutes before your lunch. Okay, or many people consume it in the morning on empty stomach. I don't know how it might react with you, but if you want to try that. Otherwise, buttermilk is excellent for building probiotic bacteria in your system, and it acts as a probiotic, and buttermilk, and anyway you eat fermented foods like idli and dosa, the batter is fantastic.
Yes.
And that's what we did when came from our ancestors. And if nothing else, during summer, I don't know, all of us in all our communities across India, we have this thing called this rice that we ferment in the night, right? A little bit of leftover rice is put in an earthen pot. you put water and you let it be, and then you eat that the first thing in the morning. That I have seen has worked fantastically for every Indian body. You eat it with either a little pickle or some onion or curd or something like that, right? So you could do all of that to help your friendly gut bacteria start growing again.
In my opinion, I think this last one, which Apeksha mentioned, Ganji, is the best. I would say because it doesn't really affect people badly.
True.
As for ACV, apple cider vinegar, some people may react to it. It gives them acidity, and it can also be a cause of histamine production in our body. So everyone has to test it. It's like when you are applying something new onto your body or taking a medicine, you always take a small shot to check your allergy. First, check. Do not jump directly into anything. First thing, of course, meet a therapist. 2, if you're doing it on your own, go take a little of it and see how your body responds. That's why when I mentioned vinegar, I just gave the caveat, take care. It can create histamine in your system. As for the stomach acid killing them, that is why it is good to take these prebiotics. It's good to do this. First, have something like fiber, like isabgol, before your food. And along with, at the end of our food, if you know South Indian food, at least, everybody knows, it ends with curd rice. Because the curd is the source of the bacteria. So when you have fiber first, the fiber goes into your system, the fiber cleanses your gut, the fiber remains as a substrate onto which the healthy bacteria come, attach, and grow their colonies. So the stomach acid wouldn't kill it because you will be taking at the end of your meal. It's already busy digesting the other foods. Consuming fermented foods, overuse, etc. Yes, pretty much. First, we have to look into each person's physiology, your system, how it is, and then we can say something for sure. These are very generic thoughts. One thing you can do is, one thing everybody can do is a mono diet. For 3 days, go on a mono diet of having only one food, one fruit, which is apple. Eat apples through the day. For 3 days, you would have cleansed your colon. You would have given your colon enough fiber for the good bacteria to come in. 3, there is a component of it called pectin, which helps the gut function, enhances the gut function. So do this for 3 days and then start with all your other things, ACV, etc., apple cider vinegar, etc. Anu, you have a question?
Hi,
Maybe you can, yeah, please go ahead.
hi, Aditya. The presentation was very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm watching this presentation with my 12-year-old daughter, which I thought will have a really good effect. I think it's very important to develop the right eating habits. I think the motivation here was, in fact, the hair and skin, because for all the teenagers, that is actually the thing now. Instead of taking tablets, it can be replenished by the food. But I think the food for brain actually answers all the questions. I think that is in turn, I think it's more important aspect we realized. And I think even my 12-year-old daughter, she realized the one thing, it is very hard for, I mean, I'm not living in the UK. I mean, living in India, I'm living in UK. So it is quite hard to avoid processed food. It is even more harder for children of 18-year-olds and 12-year-olds because it is all around you, and it is so much more easy just to grab a burger, just to grab a pizza and have lunch. So is there something, I know I'm not saying that they should do that, they should avoid doing that as much as possible. Is there something which we can do as an Indian household to cleanse, and I think you said 3 days apple therapy, and it's quite hard for me to convince my children to do that. In fact, for me to do that as well. But is there something which is easier and doesn't sound challenging to do, something which is found in our kitchen, which we can do on a weekly basis, put it in our routine, put it in our daily or a weekly routine, which becomes a habit or a second life in a way?
That's a big question, Anu. Especially with the kids, it's very difficult. The lifestyle is very different now, and especially when they are 12 and teens. Yeah, peer pressure, lifestyle, it's going to be difficult. So if you remember in childhood, our parents would give us once a month a spoonful of castor oil,
Yes.
right?
I used to
And
hate it. Yes.
those used to be terrible days. I think we can work on something like that. Another thing I can share with you is Shahi Jeera, the black jeera.
Yes.
What you can do is you can start for everybody a process of taking early morning, that is on your empty stomach, take 1 jeera, day 1, day 2, 2 jeeras, swallow it. So go from 1 to 40 and then go back to 1. So you're basically doing 80 days of cleansing.
Right. Yes, that is very interesting, and it's doable. Definitely
Yeah.
doable.
Please try that.
Yes. Thank you so much.
And also add ghee in your diet. Most of us shy away from fats, but when you say it is a good fat, again, it doesn't mean that I take a tablespoon. I take 1/4 teaspoon,
Yes.
right?
I think that is a very, very doable one, because my daughter is already smiling. She said, yes, let's do that. So yeah,
Super. Great.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Anu.
Aditya, would you like to take another question from the chat box? We'll have one last question.
Okay.
There are a couple of questions and few hands raised. So
All right. One else, when do you take Isabgol? Take Isabgol. Please remember to take the non-refined one. If you get anything in a plastic bottle these days, mostly, I'm using plastic bottle because those are the more commercial products. There is one disclaimer. I do not have any commercial affiliation with any of these. So there is the Sidhpur Mills Isabgol, which comes in a carton. Yeah, a carton, I think, a cardboard box. That is a good one to take. Take 1 tablespoon with water. Take it before your meal. Take 15 minutes before your meal. Dinner. Akshay, does workout or yoga help with good food for better CNS? How much it should be considered healthy? Workout and yoga is good. It's got its own benefit. This will go more. When you do workout, especially yoga, you're moving your gut. For most, our gut, our abdomen remains quite stationary. So when we do yoga, there is more movement in the gut, there is more circulation, and the gut health is enhanced, definitely.
okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Aditya. Thank you very much. It was very informative. We learned a lot of things. So once again, a big thanks to all of you for having joined this session, and we'll have more of these. I have all your email IDs, so I'll keep you all updated on our upcoming sessions. We'll have various other topics also. If you have any suggestions about what we should talk about, please do mail me. If you want to talk about something, if you have a good experience of speaking, and if you want to bring out your experience and share your knowledge with us, please do let me know, and we'll definitely consider it and have more sessions like this. So once again, thank you very much. We have stuck to time. It's 4:04 now. So we started at 2 and ended at 4, just like how we planned. So thank you very much, everyone. This session is recorded, so I'll be sending you the recorded version. I'll send you the link for that also. Thank you again.